Bom, gente, bem-vindos ao Live Talks. Hoje a gente está recebendo o Mohamed Ali, ele é do grupo do AFM, da Universidade de Cambridge, ele é orientado do Steve Evans, que é um parceiro nosso de pesquisa, e ele vai falar um pouquinho para a gente. Como vocês sabem, normalmente os Live Talks são em português, mas hoje vai ser em inglês, sem tradução, né? Então, basicamente, a gente vai mudar para o inglês agora. Bem-vindo a todos, tanto os que estão aqui presentes como o pessoal que está assistindo pelo YouTube. O nosso laboratório de Sustentabilidade e Economia Circular, né, que envolve a professora Roberta, Pião, né, e o pessoal também convidado da Poli, o professor Produção, a gente também, né, então, bem-vindos. So, I'm very glad to have you here all. He likes to be called not Mohammed, so we are glad you spent this March with us, and he makes some data collection about industry, and now he is going to explain for us the main topics of his PhD.
Thank you. I'll start on the slide, otherwise I'll cover the whole world. My trip to Brazil has come to an end, but I had an amazing time here. They say Europeans are a bit cold, and I never agreed with that until I got to Brazil and realized how warm you are and how welcoming you are. So thank you very much. I want to thank everybody that really helped me with the trips and making me welcome. Thank you to Marly for having me and hosting me during this time. So thank you very much. I'm Mohammed, so well, both is fine. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my PhD. And hopefully at the end we can have a little bit of discussion around the role of best practice and decarbonization in Brazil. Because my research is mainly focused on the UK and maybe widely Europe, but I would really like to get the conversation going best practice, and it's also a decarbonization strategy across Brazil and other nations that don't really have a strategy so far. So I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Cambridge with Steve Evans. Some of you might have met Steve Evans. He really encouraged me to come here and be part of Marly's group because we recognize the work you do. So thank you for having me. I'll kind of start with where my PhD journey began. In March of 2021, the UK produced an industrial decarbonization strategy, which is a roadmap for industry to decarbonize. And it was quite a significant piece of work because actually it was the first country that had developed some sort of industrial decarbonization plan. So for us, it was really significant that the UK was really at the forefront of having some sort of plan. So it gave us some hope. However, when we assessed the plan in a bit more detail, we obviously realized that this was made by politicians and not researchers or scientists. So obviously have some sort of plan to improve it. The government paid McKinsey and maybe economists a lot of money to this report, and they didn't really consult industrial researchers like ourselves to really have a go and look at this. So it was encouraging in a way that the UK has this. It was at the forefront because many countries do have a plan for nationwide how to decarbonize flights, how to decarbonize transport, how to decarbonize industry, but they don't really have a specific plan on how industry can decarbonize. So the UK was promised that the UK has this, so this is what the UK came up with. It has two different pathways. One pathway is focused on hydrogen, and one pathway is mainly focused on electrification, where depending on how electrification or hydrogen has a role in the UK economy, that's what they will see the decarbonization process by 2050. Based on this big plan, the UK is going to spend about £1 billion that they will put forward in the decarbonization process. But, well, we looked at it as, we looked at it in Steve's group. One thing that was quite interesting to us was that top part when it comes to resource efficiency and energy efficiency. Past 2030, the government doesn't really estimate that energy efficiency and resource efficiency improves much. So, for us, that was frustrating that for past 2030, the UK is not going to become any more efficient. Is that that's what the government is basically saying. So that really kind of got us started on what we started my PhD. Guided by Steve, look at this. So, and that's so breaking that down. Where does the government see the resource efficiency and energy efficiency come from? So 9 million megatons from resource efficiency and 4 million megatons from energy efficiency. So this is where the breakdown of it is. Mainly end user consumptions, improve resource efficiency, material substitutions, energy substitutions, heat upgrades, process upgrades, equipment upgrades, clustering, and backward efficiency. So all of it is, almost all of it is basically around energy efficiency through investments. This is similar to the pathways, other pathways where there needs to be significant investment from the government to support industries to become efficient through the technology process. What it doesn't mention is management. However, we realize that management can have an important role in this. But we ask ourselves, why does government not recognize this and why does government not do this? So actually, I'll go back a little bit. So looking at each pathway, the question we have is, okay, government has this plan, we look at resource efficiency. Are these pathways feasible? So we took a little sideways step to really assess each pathway and the feasibility. So we would also Steve's group in this industrial stability cohort and the research with Roberta, where we did a pathways feasibility, where we looked at the pathways and we did an assessment on we can make it. We started realizing that we really need to assess if these pathways are feasible that the government is going. Because if they're not feasible, but when we get to 2050, we're going to be really in big trouble because not that we're taking to wait until that's a big plan. So we came up with a supply chain readiness methodology where we looked at is UK able to provide the equipment and all the supply chain that it needs for carbon capture or hydrogen or electrification. So we came with a methodology where it goes from CRS1 to all the way to CRS10, depending on how mature the technology is. This was really to develop the technology within the UK. If the UK has a big plan on investing a lot of money into the supply chain of carbon capture or hydrogen, ideally they would get the UK manufacturers in it. And I think the government took a real interest in this, into really supporting UK manufacturers in having the capabilities to produce the technology that's needed in the UK. So we developed a little methodology to assess whether the technology is ready, and then based on that, we developed a list of manufacturers and database of manufacturers that can provide all the equipment for the UK's technology plan. So the way we did it was we divided up the components for each pathway in a little four parts, depending on volume, supply chain readiness, and depending on how much of volume is required and how much of the supply chain readiness the UK is already has. And each component then would highlight the challenges and the feasibility of each pathway. For example, if you need something that's high volume, can the UK manufacturers actually develop the volume that's required? Or if you need something that's has a very high supply chain readiness, can the UK develop and bring something to the market that has where they have the skills that are required in the manufacturing industry? UK industry is there, but it's not as developed as somewhere like Germany, or somewhere where we did, someone like Sweden was very high producing net zero steel. So this would highlight where the UK needs to look at to get the supply chain ready. So we did a little pathway. We did for pre-combustion solvent-based carbon capture, where we start filling in the diagram where we need each equipment for carbon capture in either the volume or the supply chain readiness. And we filled the diagram in and we did a small test for just for pipelines. Just for to see, to take a small component within pipelines and within the supply chain, which is critical behind the pipelines, especially in the UK. With carbon capture, what they're going to do, they have clusters on the UK. And depending on the clusters, they're going to build pipelines to each other with the carbons going to transport. So this was done by my colleague Callum at work, where he mapped the pipelines. How he did it, to be honest, I'm not sure, but I'll take his word for it. I'm guessing he's a very smart guy, so I'm sure he has some good model, but this was supported by WMG and University of Work, where they did the models on the pipelines needed, and based on the UK project, where they're going to build 4 clusters of carbon capture, where that's where the big industries are going to be, and that's what capture. So from our models of feasibility pathways, just looking at the pathways overall, only for pipelines, we observed 2 interesting things. So, based on the models for carbon steel and stainless steel, the first thing we noticed that the pipelines required, just for the pipes required, is going to be, if they use carbon steel, it will be about 1.6 billion pounds, and if they use stainless steel, it's about 5.5 billion pounds. So just for the steel needed in the pipelines, in the carbon capture pathway, not even taking into account the compressors, the storage tanks, everything else, it's already 5 times over the budget. So already we realize that the budget really, already from the budget, we're not in trouble. Because we need, I know, this is pipelines where this, everybody in pipelines, pipes are not that specialized in a way. It just depends on the material. So, and also it was interesting to find that we look at the emissions, depending on the materials, it's then about 4 megatons of CO2 emitted. So you're already emitting all this emissions just from the pipelines that's going to go into one of the pathways, and it's one component of it. These are things that the government don't really think about in their models. But carbon capture is all the money goes into carbon capture, but even though we're not exactly sure if carbon capture is going to work. Well, expertise say it will work, but will it work by 2050? That's the big question. So this was, after doing this model just for one component, we started realizing that okay, we might be in real trouble here if we only rely on technology. And this is not just the case for the UK. After, in 2020, about 9 months after the UK published their industrial decarbonization strategy, and after COP26, the US also came up with their strategy for industry. The US obviously does everything a bit bigger and more, so they are investing a lot more money than the UK, but their pathway is all very much reliant on either carbon capture, electrification, or some sort of hydrogen. Even when we look at energy efficiency and alternative approaches, it's more on the use of biomethane and other technologies to get us to net zero. But they also didn't really take into account the management practices that could be used, and also they didn't take into account the huge costs, like we showed with our clusters and pipes. So if anyone is looking for any business ideas, I think selling pipes and metal might be a good business model for you to follow in the UK. But this is where the significance of our work comes in. About 10 years ago, Greg and Steve did a work and published a report called The Next Manufacturing Revolution, where they highlighted the importance of best practice. If the worst manufacturers emulate the best manufacturers, you can see significant emissions reductions through that. For example, if if you take the lowest producers of drinks and whatever, they're the best. This one, the efficiency gains there. They don't have to be the best, but if they get halfway there, you're already reducing emissions. So based on their methodology, 10 years ago, they realized that just from emitting and copying that method, we can add 27 million megatons of CO2. I think that's from the UK. That accounts for 4.5% of total emissions, of UK total emissions. So that's quite significant. And not only that, not only does the UK not have to invest in anything, it adds 10 billion to the economy. Because if manufacturers are using less waste, using less electricity, are using water more efficiently, that's all adding to the UK economy. So we realized, well, 10 years ago, they really realized the significance that best practice can have in terms of adding to the economy and sustainability emissions. However, the government hasn't really taken this into account in their projections. So that's where my PhD basically comes into this. And how do we get this into government, and how do we get this into some sort of national strategy or policy, and how do we actually get government to support manufacturers and businesses to implement this? Because it's not just a case of just showing up and like, okay, become more efficient. We need the knowledge and the standards set by government for businesses to follow and put in place in a way. So that's basically the overview of my PhD. And some might say, well, this sounds great that you say this, but do we have any data that you can actually show that this is possible? Well, if we look at it, from a lean approach, lean has been big since the 70s, and they've been using it to way. And when we look at best practices, we just say that we want to follow practices that are work leading. We can emulate stuff that we can emulate the work that's done by Toyota and multinational companies that are really being followed by the multinational companies that have been doing this for the last 50 years. If other manufacturers start following this, not only will they become more profitable, they will also become more stable. And when we look at best practice, the real idea that incorporates us is becoming more energy efficient, looking at waste reductions, packaging optimization, circular use and transport efficiency, supply chain collaborations, and revenue growth. I mean, I think a lot of sustainability researchers in this room, so I'm kind of speaking to them. It's preaching to the choir, but this is not so obvious to manufacturers. It was very interesting when I visited Flex. When I asked them about their use of waste, and they said to me, before I even asked them, they said, lean is at the core of what we do. For us to be sustainable, we need to be a lean company. And it's very interesting that, as Flex is saying, that Flex is awarded for being one of the lighthouse companies in Brazil and one of the most sustainable. So it's amazing that the most sustainable countries are actually recognizing that they really need to incorporate this to make it part of their business model. And actually, what we're seeing is that in manufacturing, the traditional focus has been on labor efficiency. Labor has been efficiency of labor has been about 3% per annum for the last 100 years or so. But if you look at the cost of goods, which is the top one, it's far higher than the cost of labor. But we have fluctuations and inefficiencies when it comes to it, because the focus is on labor. But if we shift that focus from the efficiency on labor to efficiency on the cost of goods and materials and services, we can see that actually the company is become less reliant on fluctuations in the market, prices that we've seen recently. And in our pattern, from our models, what we've seen is that even though both are going down, the cost of goods and materials is the gap between the two is increasing. So in 1998, the gap was 3.4 times, and in 2019 it's 4.1 times the cost. So even though labor is where the focus is, we should really focus on what the highest cost is, and that's the cost of goods. And there's a general trend that when we look at the cost of goods, it's very much in line with the cost of food. regression analysis when we looked at the cost of goods spent in the UK compared to the cost of crude. That a 10% increase in crude leads to a 1.4% increase in the cost of materials the year after. That 1.4% might not sound a lot when there's a 10% increase, but when we had the crisis in Ukraine, we saw the price of crude double. So then manufacturers, especially the smaller ones, are starting to struggle adding to inflation in the country. So this kind of highlights again that we really need to start focusing on being more efficient with our materials and starting to use less. So this goes back into our package of best practice. When we did our analysis of best practice companies compared to the industry average, apart from two industries, we saw that best practice manufacturers almost in every sector were more efficient compared to the industry average. So this is significant for our model. So when we see that best practice manufacturers on average are almost twice as much efficient as the industry average, we can really see where the efficiency gains will be. So 2%, 2.5% per year is not that much, but if you model it over a space of a period of 10 years, if we started with best practice manufacturing in the 1990s, by 2030 we would almost be at our goals of energy efficiency gains. But if we look at it, if we keep going, if we don't look at best practice and we don't take into account, our projections show that there's going to be a 20% increase of emissions compared to all this energy intensity compared to this average. So I would really like to highlight this again, that there can be significant gains made just by looking at best practice. And gains that we can really add immediately in comparison to carbon capture, we don't even know where we're going to be in 2010, 2030. So to bring it all together, my PhD research focuses on the role of best practice and industrial decarbonization. The role best practice can have on reducing the risks of and reducing the pressures on hydrogen, carbon capture, and electrification. And what I would really like to know is how can we incorporate best practice into a strategy for developing nations as well. I'm fairly sure I was born in Iraq. In Iraq at the moment, the last thing they want to hear about is sustainability, especially when they are struggling with education, with the struggle with poverty. They don't want to know about investing in carbon capture. They don't have electricity 24 hours in a day. But in a developing nation like Iraq, when you can implement something like the best practice where you can show the manufacturers the way that the best companies are doing it, this doesn't take much to actually add to the economy, it takes the pressures on the national grid and has an impact on the world. So, so I thank you for your time and thank you for listening to my presentation.
Thank you, Mo. Now it's time for questions. Someone else, do you want to start?
Thank you very much for your presentation. And I have two questions for you. One is the benchmark of your research and which country has the best policy and the best implementation now. And the second one is about the social inclusion part, yes? Because do you have any idea about how companies can do that, like changing rules? Because I'd like that you give more features of this change if you can.
So in terms of the first question, you're asking, do you mean which countries are doing it the best? Actually, the answer is no country. Because if any country is doing it, we would emanate it already. And no other country apart from the US and the UK have a complete industrial decarbonization strategy. And already we're seeing, even though we commend the UK for having some sort of strategy, we're still tearing apart for basically how bad it is and how much it didn't take into account. However, there are some companies such as when we look at individual companies, they're amazing. When Toyota has been doing this for the last 40, 50 years, the lean thinking done by Japan, they have management structures in place. that we can really highlight and can be an example of what can be done around the world. But usually, big multinational companies might have some sort of process implementation in place. They might have some ISO standards. So at least they have something. Whereas the smaller and medium-sized companies or manufacturers, they don't really have that process in place. And I think that kind of follows to the second question where you asked, what I think the process that you can put in place. I think that's quite a tough question to answer because it's very dependent on each individual company. Because each company can do it in many different things depending on what they have or haven't done. But, for example, the UK does have something around ISO standards that can be implemented on a national scale. That's fine, but what the government really needs to focus on, what I think, is that it needs to focus on the culture within the company. Because if the culture from the top doesn't want to implement some sort of lean thinking or sustainability thinking, then the changes aren't really going to happen. And that was for me, it was amazing to see when I went to Hamburg and when I went to Texas. They both told me we're a sustainability company. So everything they do and everything they do at the core goes back to sustainability company. So their culture is around sustainability. So I think what really needs to be done is the change around the culture and the way they think. And after that, you can implement processes and stuff from the processes. The ISO standards are the lead in their thinking, just in time and management of stock and reducing waste. I hope that can answer your question.
Thank you for the presentation. I have two questions. Are you carrying on your research in considering four main clusters in the UK? Is okay?
Actually, so the main cluster is just an example of what the UK is doing about carbon control. My research won't really look at that. The government is interested in the study. I was supported in a rest of my research, but that's only the way government sees the implementation of carbon control.
Okay.
I'm trying to get away from carbon control.
Okay. So, consider this industry, which one most more carbon intensive in this case?
Well, we have steel in the UK. We have big plant.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Well, in the UK we have it's called the big heavy industry, cement, the glass, and the steel. We have the steel. We have the big cement factories, EcoSan. We have the NSG, the big glass manufacturers. So they're very intense in terms of emissions in the UK. The UK is planning on reducing emissions from them. But again, it's very much focused on electrification. But electrification of steel has all sorts of problems with the amount of input of energy needed. So that's a new thing, especially in the UK, where the life cycle of furnace is about 30 to 40 years. Some of these furnaces have only been installed 10 to 15 years ago. Who's going to fund the bill of installing a new furnace? Who's going to pay for it? The government doesn't want to pay for it. We, especially in the UK, we change governments every 2 minutes. So again, we're not sure where it goes. However, we are working on some plans where we're advising government the way. Our recommendation is look at the way manufacturers are using their process parameters, optimizing parameters in a way that can have significant emissions immediately, reduction of emissions immediately, and that will save you some money. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say that carbon capture is not needed. Carbon capture and electrification will be needed, but we're just looking at some stuff that can be done immediately and we'll start reducing emissions straight away. That's what we're focused on. And come into a package or have a role in. Thank you.
It's a nice talk on an area which is not mine. But I remember last year in the group I'm participating, we had R&D director of Ryzen. Ryzen is one of the main producers of alcohol and sugar here in the state. And he claimed he would make the factory totally carbon neutral, something like 15 years. Do you think this is feasible, or was he doing PR?
I mean, I won't be able to comment on that specific factory, but actually we heard this a lot. This is very normal. When we come into a manufacturer, we run into manufacturers, and they say, "Oh, yeah, I know you're working on efficiency, but where as efficient as possible, we can't become more efficient." But then you're like, actually, well, the data shows that if you change this parameter and that parameter, you can reduce 10% already. But I think with that, that's very much nothing. I think that's very much beyond. But I think every manufacturer wants to go to and say that they're doing something on sustainability. Greenwashing is also a very big thing. And also, I think it's a tough style what we're doing in a way that, because we're just telling people, actually, what you're doing is not that efficient, you can do better. And I think nobody wants to be told that they're doing something not as efficiently as possible, or that they can do something better. Especially someone like me, they're like, some of these directors that I speak to, they're like, I've been in this for 20 years. What can you tell me? I'm like, well, it's not what I can tell you, it's not the research. But the research says I'm just trying to implement that. So I think we get this far a lot, and it's quite interesting to see that. It also happens in Brazil.
Anyone else?
So you were saying you're doing an analysis on organizations, right? So plants, right? And have you mapped all those map of best practices?
So actually, what my PhD looks at is because there's PhDs before me in states that have done this already. I know some of them where they look at manufacturers when they have a good day and a bad day, that actually manufacturers don't perform evenly over time. Some days they're better than others. What can they do for management practices over time? So there has been some sort of mapping already. I've been done in my PhD. And through BAME, through the lean way of thinking, which is one of the most established ways that we can implement it. But the real question I'm trying to get to, and what I'm trying to really want is how can government implement this as part of strategy? Because that's where I feel we can really have to change. Because if individual manufacturers are doing it here and there, that's great, but that's not the real change that we want. The real change has to come from government. And I think it can be quite difficult and maybe somewhat controversial that some government believes that the free market is going to take care of it, that if we leave it to capitalist system, that governments, that individuals might look after it, but I think real change needs to come from the government really needs to push it. So that's what I'm trying to get to where my PhD work. There will be some sort of mapping what I'm sure what has to be done and what can be done, but my real question is how do we get government to really buy into this?
Anyone else? One?
Yes. So if in case of anyone else there, am I trying to get people government? Mainly from base, the UK government, we're in discussions with them, in the UK, that the government has to push that way. However, I don't know if anyone here has worked in anyone government. It's quite difficult to actually get something done there. So I hope that I can have something that our research shows that the government can do something, and then it will be taken into account by the government body. Again, like I said, the UK government changes every 2 minutes, so they might have a plan every so. But ideally, what I would like to do is develop a framework that can be taken by civil servants, policies, not just in the UK, but especially in developing nations that can look at this and think, okay, this is something that can be done without investing money. This can really support the economy. That's something that's basically my dream and aim of this project.
day that I have one. We have studied a lot lean and green in the past 20 years. So we have a rolling of practices related to lean and green. But I think to be so aggressive, like Claudia mentioned, and the zero emissions on 2050, it's really aggressive, particularly with the real scenario that we saw. And I think we need to map also some breakthrough practices, and probably we will find related to digital transformation and also other practices related to circular economy and so on. So I think we have to, for sure, ground what is really done related to lean and green, because lean is 50 years and lean and green 20 years. So we have this background, but with this background, I think it will not be enough. We will need to pick some breakthrough practices, particularly digital transformation, I guess, but also circular economy and so on. So I'd like to know what you think about and if you are looking at these practices too.
That's a great question, and I think that's a very difficult question to answer actually, because ultimately it comes to the core of it. You're making me sweat. But I think the core of it is that why, even though we have lean and green and people know about lean and green, why has it not been implemented? Why are companies not doing it? Why are we not taking it account? I think that's basically the core of it, that we really need to have something where we start thinking lean in every manufacturing company, every strategy, in terms of what can be done in digital transformations of circular economy. I think that's also very much dependent on the industry. I look at industry as a whole, but I also recognize that the automotive industry is going to be very different to the drinks industry. So that pretty much depends on the industry. In terms of digital transformation, I haven't really looked at that, to be honest. I kind of have to pick my battles in a way that I am the only person looking at this from my group, where every time I put someone in there, go and be like, oh, so you're the only person looking at it. Well, you know, so I kind of have to pick my battles in terms of what I look at, but the circular economy approach and approaching that in terms of looking at that, that's where my focus is. And what I was really amazing to see when I went to Lex, how they really think of a circular way, and how they are thinking that they are, every lean practice there is, they're already thinking of focusing on it. So that's what my focus is. When I look at companies like that, map out what they do, and then take that and implement it as well. Again, it's very difficult because from Flex's point of view, they're very good. I'm not talking about Flex in particular. When the good companies are doing this, why would we want this competitive advantage to competitors to implement? So some companies are very good, they are already published stuff like good practices. I'm glad that actually was there. So this can be taken by smaller manufacturers. So these are the steps and maps that I can look at and implement. But in terms of actual processes that's done by the best of the best, I also have the challenge of competitive advantage to these manufacturers actually want to tell me and really take what they do and spread it across the world. That is also another challenge. Many challenges, I kind of have to pick my battles, but I kind of answer your question.
Try to understand a little bit the framework you want to propose. You want to map these practices, but maybe you wanted to put some kind of scoring. It's much more difficult to implement. This you can do now and achieve. So, what kind of framework are you planning to? Because I think it's not a box, but you mentioned you want to show the pathway. So the pathway, you need to give more tips.
And my honest answer to that is, I don't know yet. That's fine. But the way I've been thinking about it and the way I want to approach it, and again, I would love any guidance if anyone has it, in terms of the framework. I would like to, the aim of the framework is to have as big of an impact as possible. So, again, any suggestions are very open to it. So, what I would really like to do is map the practices that are there, ISO standards, green thinking, just that kind of stuff. So, put that in the pathway. But then the framework would look at how can government push it. So, does government have to put money aside for the implementation of consultants? This is the policy that's done was done in Sweden and Portugal for a little bit, where they push for consultants to go into manufacturers to implement the lean way of thinking. So this was quite popular and very much done in Portugal, but that was quite unique to Portugal because I think 80% of medium-sized manufacturers are family owned. So it really depends on the landscape of the country. So that's the kind of idea I have, where we have we map what's already done. That's definitely something I will definitely do. But how I implement it in the best way for civil servants and people in government to take notice, I don't know. But then the question is, does government even take notice anyway? So I think that's the real question. I'm still thinking of that, but what it actually going to companies like Amber and Flex give me a different perspective in the way I think maybe it's something like Express. They really have the culture and the thinking base. What can government do to reward them? And if government rewards them, what other companies follow suit just like they do. So I think maybe something like that can also be implemented framed in the framework.
I was wondering here, in the 90s, for instance, in Brazil, we had government programs that was so-called quality and productivity programs. So they start with this kind of lean production and this kind of more related to quality program, zero defects and so on. And this kind of program maybe should be interesting to understand because they have this kind of training, but also some lab infrastructure to help companies to understand and to have some tests and so on. Maybe in Brazil it was in the 90s, but I guess in UK and other countries it was previously in the 80s, maybe or after the Second War. So maybe this kind of program that was national basic program, it could be interesting to understand. The idea is not a decarbonization strategy, but it was to improve quality and to improve productivity. Maybe this kind of programs, and there are a lot that have, even here in Brazil, this program have important success. So I guess
that's the core of it. I think that's the core of what we're trying to do actually. A national strategy where we put sustainability at the core. If you have programs or to look at quality, that's amazing. But I think we need to shift in the way that we also incorporate sustainability. But actually, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I agree. And actually, when I went to Nissan in Rio and Flex as well, it was really interesting that we have in Brazil is that we have this where government supports big companies and integrating them with startups. So these companies have this program, they'll tell me about it, and this is something really amazing that these big national companies are supporting through their facilities, the startups for technology. I think when you're I think we also need separate to work out in. I think these are the kind of policies that really support a sustainable economy. If you are a hydrogen producer that needs a lot of capital and has more stress of capital, when you have a program like this, you can go to a big company and support this, this is stuff that really gets added to the framework of a sustainable economy. And these, I think, we need more initiatives like that, especially anyway, in the UK, when we have these big national companies that can perhaps support this stuff. This is the right way of doing it. I think there's a lot of things that Brazil is doing really well that I can take away and put in the way the UK can do it. So very, very interesting.
We are not so optimistic. maybe there are next 4 years. Okay. Anyone else want to questions? So I'd like to thank you again for the presentation, and we are here for helping you whenever you want to. Let's collaborate. This is a really interesting topic.
If there's anyone here that's from wants to do something together, of course, we're very much open to it. Thank you again, Marly, and thank you for.
Thank you, Mo. Bom, então nós vamos encerrar, né, o Laptops. Pessoal que está assistindo pelo YouTube, obrigada e até a próxima.